All right, guys, the JCPOA, that was the agreement that's highly talked about and something we don't really get details about. I don't know a lot about it. I'm actually going to read the agreement, at least a portion of it, and I can make a video about it, whatever stands out to me the most. But it was the agreement, the nuclear agreement. So it's also known as the P5+1. So the 5 powers plus Iran, I think. And it was led by the Obama administration with John Kerry, who I don't know who he was at the time, Secretary of State. I don't know who John Kerry was actually. Probably Secretary of State. I'm not sure. And some other countries. I'm gonna get into that right now. But it's the agreement that's pretty infamous. When you hear Trump say Iran was poor, Iran was weak, all of a sudden America makes Iran strong again. And he's talking about the JCPOA. So I'm gonna go over it. Again, this is from ChatGPT. The JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So joint, a group of people. And a comprehensive plan of action was created through negotiations between Iran and a group of 6 world powers known as the P5+1. So +1 must have been someone was added later. So this is United States, the UK, France, Russia, China, and Germany. Iran represented by the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran. United States, the UK, Russia, China, France, and Germany. And a lot of these are nuclear powers. You got Iran. No, not North Korea. North Korea ain't involved. So, key negotiators here of this JCPOA. This is headed by the Barack Obama administration. President Barack Obama supported the diplomatic initiative. Secretary of State John Kerry led U.S. negotiator. He was the lead U.S. negotiator. Wendy Sherman, under Secretary of State for Political Affairs. Iran, President Hassan Rouhani, elected in 2013 on a platform of diplomacy. Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif, lead Iranian negotiator. The European Union's role, European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Federica Mogherini, coordinated the talks and chaired the final agreement session. The timeline. Talks began in 2013 after the election of Rouhani. An interim deal, the JPOA, the Joint... What's JPOA? The Joint Plan of Action was reached in November 2013. Final agreement, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was signed on July 14th, 2013 in Vienna, Austria. So purposes of the JCPOA was designed to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities in exchange for sanctions relief. So we're negotiating here. We're taking sanctions. I forgot the name. We're gonna cooperate with you guys. We're gonna give up something for us to get something. We're gonna take off sanctions, economic sanctions. Remember, we put sanctions by saying anybody who does business with this country we don't like, we're not gonna do business with you guys. So it puts pressures on other countries not to do business with that country we're trying to weaken, considerably our enemy. And so we don't want you guys don't have any nukes. We're gonna give you sanctions relief. Establish monitoring and verification through the IAEA. So the IAEA is like this international organization that goes into these countries and makes sure that their nuclear program is for nuclear power, nuclear energy, not to create nuclear weapons. So establishes monitoring and verification through the IAEA. Prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon for at least 10 to 15 years. So think about that. There was an actual idea that Iran would have nuclear weapons. This administration says Iran can never have nuclear weapons, not with the Ayatollah regime right now. A final agreement of the JCPOA was signed on July 14, 2015 in Vienna, Austria. I read that. So the JCPOA Iran nuclear deal was controversial in the U.S. and seen differently depending on political, strategic, and ideological perspectives. Here's a balanced breakdown of why some critics saw it as bad for the U.S. and good for Iran, and how it ultimately turned out. Why was the JCPOA considered bad for the U.S.? Number one, sunset provisions. Critics said key restrictions on Iran's nuclear activities expire after 10 to 15 years, potentially enabling Iran to resume enrichment on an industrial scale later. After 2030, Iran could theoretically pursue weapons-grade enrichment more freely. Number two, did not address ballistic missiles. The deal focused only on nuclear activity, not on Iran's ballistic missile program, which could eventually deliver nuclear weapons. Remember, how a missile, it's like an unmanned rocket, an unmanned. So these missiles, they're not nuclear, but they're still powerful when they on impact. And ballistic missiles, the importance of ballistic missiles is the distance they're able to travel. That's the importance of these missiles. So this did not focus on, but so number one problem was the time frame. You give them a 10 to 15 year time frame. And number two was it didn't focus on ballistic missiles. And number three, unfreezing of assets and sanctions relief. Iran received $100 billion in frozen assets and access to global markets. So frozen assets. I wish I would ask ChatGPT what that meant. So critics said this funded Iran's proxies like Hezbollah, Houthis, and Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, increasing regional instability. So Iran received, so that's the idea that we allow them to be rich. They received $100 billion in frozen assets and access to global markets. And so again, they can't have nuclear weapons, but they could buy weapons for these revolutionary groups. So that's number three, the unfreezing of assets and sanctions relief. Number four, verification versus access delays. The IAEA could inspect any site, but with up to 24 days delay at undeclared locations. So verification versus access delays. The IAEA could inspect any site, but with up to 24 days delay at undeclared locations. So giving them time maybe to hide shit or whatever. Critics feared Iran could sanitize sites in that window of time. Number five, U.S. made permanent concessions. Sanctions were lifted permanently, but with Iran's obligations were time limited. So sanctions were lifted permanently, but Iran's obligations were time limited. Remember, that's so stupid. So, okay, sanctions are lifted permanently. You get money, you could do business with other countries. We're allowing other countries to do business with you guys, and we're not going to penalize them. Remember, people want to capitalize on open markets, right? And that's just part of the game. And so 10 to 15 years, we're taking sanctions off you permanently, but you can't have nuclear weapons for 10 to 15 years. After that, we'll talk about it. We'll renegotiate. But again, it sounds like that, but if America, it's not a permanent. We'll put sanctions on your ass again if we want. I'm just saying, speaking from my idea of how America would do it, especially with Trump administration. I don't want to say this because there's a lot of that, the Trump administration that I like, and I voted for Trump. And so it just seems stupid, right? There was a time limit on there wasn't a time limit on the sanctions, but there was. But I think America was like, in writing, it probably looked like we're lifting up sanctions because there was no time limit to them. But I'm sure it was contingent off some things. So why was it seen as good for Iran? Economic relief. Iran gained access to billions in frozen funds, resumed oil exports, and rejoined the global economy. So they got rich overnight, dude. Iran gained access to billions in frozen funds, resumed oil exports. Remember, they're one of the biggest oil exports, and rejoined the global economy. Number two, recognition of enrichment program. For the first time, world powers accepted Iran's right to enrich uranium under restrictions. No regime change pressure. The deal significantly reduced military pressure and talk of regime change. kept nuclear infrastructure intact. Iran dismantled some centrifuges and facilities, but kept its core program, only scaling it down temporarily. So, obviously, economic resources to fund these proxy rebel groups who ended up being a threat to the region, primarily Israel. And you got other countries recognizing that they should have them openly. No regime change pressure, and the nuclear infrastructure was kept intact. How did the deal ultimately turn out? Short-term success. From 2015 to 2018, Iran complied with nuclear limits confirmed by the IAEA. Remember that inspection agency, International Inspection Agency. Nuclear breakout time. How fast Iran could build a bomb increased from 2 to 3 months to over 12 months. U.S. and allies had more insight into Iran's program than ever before because of the IAEA. So that was short-term success. Well, collapse after U.S. withdrawal. In May 2018, President Trump unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, calling it a terrible deal. The U.S. reinstated maximum pressure sanctions despite Iran's compliance. Iran gradually resumed enrichment, stockpiled uranium, and limited IAEA access. There you go. As of 2024-2025, Iran's breakout time is estimated to be as short as a few weeks. That's kind of bad, right? So now it went from 2 to 3 months to make some missiles and rockets and bombs or military weapons to 12 months, and now it's taking a few weeks. So bottom line, some critics, mostly U.S. conservatives, Israel, and Gulf states, said the deal was too lenient, temporary, and funded Iran's aggression. I mean, Iran was using that money for their proxy wars, right? They were funding because of the unfreezing of these frozen assets. That was redundant. The unfreezing of the assets, being allowed to export oil, and being part of the global economy again. They were able, but through proxy, to fund. And now we're getting insight, right? This is powerful insight here. This is why they're kind of they have their hands back, but they could fund these things. They could fund, and they could feel, hey, we don't need that shit anymore. We're rich again. Like America. Supporters of Obama administration, the European Union, the IAEA, many scientists argued it was the best verifiable way to prevent Iran from getting a bomb, short term, and I don't know, avoid war. I can't remember I don't see what that says. So this is the pros and cons of the JCPOA. Pros and cons of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So it was 10 to 15 years. You can't, we have the IAEA. We're going to go over there. We could verify, we could inspect. But we're going to unfreeze assets, allow you back in the global economy, taking sanctions off. But what seemed like an indefinite amount of time. And it allowed them to get rich again. We unfroze billions of assets, allowed them to export oil. Took sanctions off of other countries from doing business with them. And what they did, they funded these revolutionary proxy wars, Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah. And but Trump said, no, fuck that. We ain't doing that. In 2018, he said, we don't agree to this shit. And it's just insight, guys. And here we are.